Success tastes like expensive champagne and smells like leather seats in a private jet. At least that's what I thought until I walked through my front door that evening, still high from closing the biggest deal of my career. The voices from our kitchen stopped me cold. Mark, darling, you have to talk to her. This isn't natural. A woman her age should be focusing on family, not gallivanting across the country for business meetings. I'm Angelina, and that shrill voice belongs to Helen Carter, my mother-in-law and self-appointed expert on how other women should live their lives. Mom, it's complicated. Angie loves her work and she's good at it. Mark's voice, my husband's voice, carried that familiar weak undertone that always emerged when confronting his mother. Good at it? What good is that when your home is empty, when there are no children's voices filling these halls? My heels clicked against the hardwood floor as I rounded the corner. They both jumped, Helen's perfectly manicured hand flying to her throat in mock surprise. Oh, Angelina, we didn't hear you come in. Clearly, I set my briefcase on the counter with more force than necessary. Please don't let me interrupt this fascinating discussion about my reproductive choices. Mark stepped forward, his face already arranged in that placating expression I'd grown to hate. Honey, we were just talking. About how I'm failing as a woman, as a wife? I pulled out my phone, thumbing through messages. Fascinating topic, though I'd rather discuss how I just secured a $15 million deal for tech innovations. But please continue explaining how I should be barefoot and pregnant instead. Helen's lips thinned into that familiar disapproving line. There's no need for sarcasm, dear. We're concerned about your priorities. My priorities? I laughed, the sound sharp enough to make Mark wince. Let's talk about priorities, Helen. Like your priority of showing up uninvited to my home while I'm away on business. This is my son's home too. Mom, Mark started, but I cut him off. No, let her finish. I want to hear exactly how you think my life should look. Should I quit my job tomorrow? Start wearing pearls and hosting dinner parties? Maybe take up needlepoint? Helen stood, smoothing her expensive skirt. You mock traditional values, but look at what your modern lifestyle is doing to your marriage. Mark needs to speak for himself. I turned to my husband. What do you need, Mark? Besides your mother making decisions for you? The silence stretched between us like a rubber band about to snap. Mark looked from his mother to me, his mouth opening and closing without sound. That's what I thought. I grabbed my briefcase. I'll be in my office. I have actual work to do, unlike some people who spend their days plotting other people's lives. Angelina, Helen's voice followed me down the hall. This behavior is exactly why. I slammed my office door, drowning out the rest of her sentence. My hands shook as I unlocked my laptop, the screen lighting up with congratulatory emails about the deal. Somehow, they didn't seem as important anymore. My phone buzzed. A message from Rachel. Drinks tonight to celebrate? You deserve it after crushing that presentation. I typed back quickly. Make it a double. You won't believe what I just walked into. Through the wall, I could hear Helen's muffled voice still going, probably listing all my failures as a wife. Mark's responses were too quiet to make out, but I knew that weak, agreeable tone would be there. I opened my email and started typing a response to Eli Thompson, our CEO, about the next phase of the project. If Helen wanted war, fine, but she'd learned that this modern woman knew how to fight back. And unlike her, I didn't need to hide behind anyone else to do it. Let the games begin. Eli Thompson's office always smelled like expensive coffee and power. He sat across from me, sliding a leather portfolio across his mahogany desk. You've earned this, Angelina. The Singapore expansion needs someone with your talent. I opened the portfolio, and the numbers made my fingers tingle. Vice President of International Operations, the promotion I'd been working toward for 3 years. There's significant travel involved, Eli continued, watching me carefully. At least 6 months based in Singapore to start. I know you'll need to discuss this with Mark. The mention of Mark's name made my jaw clench. After last week's ambush with Helen, we'd barely spoken. When do you need an answer? End of the week. David's already on board to support you from here. I nodded, closing the portfolio. The weight of it felt like ammunition in my hands. That evening, I arranged dinner at LeBlanc, thinking a public setting might keep things civil. I should have known better. Helen arrived with Mark because of course she did, wearing a smile that could freeze hell. Singapore? Helen's voice carried across the restaurant. Mark, darling, you can't possibly allow this. Allow? I set down my wine glass before I could throw it. I wasn't aware I needed permission. Mark shifted in his seat, his tie suddenly too tight. It's not about permission, Angie. It's about our future. 6 months is a long time. Our future? I leaned forward. Or the future your mother has planned for us. Don't be dramatic, dear, Helen cut in. We're thinking of what's best for your marriage, for the family you should be starting. The waiter approached with menus, then retreated quickly, reading the tension at our table. The family I should be starting, I repeated, each word sharp as glass. Tell me, Helen, did you have a career before you married Mark's father? I dedicated myself to my family, something you seem incapable of understanding. Mom, please, Mark started. No, let her finish. I smiled, all teeth. Tell me more about dedication while you're sitting at my dinner table, interfering in my marriage, trying to derail my career. Helen's perfectly lined lips trembled. Mark needs a proper wife, someone who puts family first. What Mark needs, I said, standing up, is a spine. But apparently that's not genetic in your family. Mark grabbed my arm. Angie, sit down. People are staring. I yanked free. Let them stare. I'm done performing for your mother's approval. If you take this job, Helen called after me, you'll lose him. Is that what you want? I turned back, meeting Mark's eyes. What I want a partner who stands by me, who celebrates my successes instead of treating them like failures. But mostly, I want my husband to choose me over his mother's manipulation. The silence that followed was answer enough. Back home, I locked myself in my office, pulling up my email. My fingers flew across the keyboard. Eli, I accept the position. When can I start? The response came within minutes. Congratulations. We'll begin transition planning tomorrow. My phone buzzed. Rachel calling. I just left the most spectacular disaster of a dinner, I said by way of greeting. I'm coming over, with wine. 30 minutes later, we sat on my office floor, shoes off, sharing a bottle of Merlot. You should have seen Helen's face, I said, laughing without humor. Like I'd suggested selling Mark into slavery instead of advancing my career. Rachel topped off my glass. And Mark? Same as always, sitting there like a statue while Mommy Dearest plans his life. I took a long drink. You know what's funny? I used to think his loyalty to family was admirable. Now I realize it's just cowardice dressed up as devotion. What are you going to do? I pulled out the portfolio from my bag, handed it to her. I'm going to Singapore. I'm going to take this promotion and crush it. And if Mark can't handle that... I shrugged, but my hands shook slightly as I reached for my wine. Rachel read through the details, whistling low. Helen's going to lose her mind. Good. I stood up, walking to the window. Somewhere in the apartment, I could hear Mark moving around, probably calling his mother to strategize their next move. Let her lose it. I'm done playing by her rules. And Mark? I pressed my forehead against the cool glass. He has until Friday to decide whose life he wants to live. His mother's version of it, or the real thing. With me. But in my heart, I already knew his choice. And I was already planning my revenge. Something felt wrong the moment I stepped into our apartment. The air smelled different. Lavender and lemon, Helen's signature cleaning scents. I'd come home early from work, a migraine pounding behind my eyes, only to find evidence of yet another uninvited visit. The kitchen gleamed unnaturally. The spice rack, which I'd organized by cuisine type, now stood alphabetized, but it was the nursery catalog on the counter that made my blood run cold. Pages were dog-eared, notes scribbled in Helen's precise handwriting. Perfect for twins, and Mark loved this pattern as a baby. My phone buzzed, a text from Mark. Working late tonight, don't wait up. I moved through our home like a crime scene investigator, cataloging the changes. The guest room door stood ajar. Inside, my home office had been partially dismantled. My desk pushed against the wall, my professional certificates taken down. In their place, a paint swatch card in pale yellow. Perfect for a nursery. The master bedroom was worse. My dresser drawers had been reorganized, birth control pills conspicuously missing. In their place, a fertility tracking calendar and a book, Making Time for Family, The Professional Woman's Guide to Balance. I was taking photos of everything when I heard the front door open. Oh, Helen's voice carried down the hall. I didn't expect anyone home so early. I stepped into the hallway, phone still in hand. Clearly, that's why you felt comfortable breaking in? Breaking in? She laughed, holding up a key. Mark gave me this months ago. Someone needs to maintain this place while you're so busy. Maintain? I held up the nursery catalog. You mean redecorate, rearrange, reorganize my entire life without my permission? I'm helping, dear. Someone needs to think about your future. My future? I advanced toward her. Or the future you're trying to force on me. Mark agrees you need guidance. He's worried about your priorities. Mark agrees? The words tasted like acid. When exactly did my husband discuss this with you? Helen's smile turned triumphant. We talk every day, dear. Who do you think suggested he give me the key? The betrayal hit like a physical blow. Get out. Now, Angelina, get out. I grabbed her arm, propelling her toward the door. And leave the key. Mark won't like this behavior. Mark can come talk to me himself, without his mommy as translator. The door slammed behind her. I immediately called Mark. Voicemail. I texted, "Come home now. We need to talk." His response came quickly. In meetings all evening. Tomorrow? I sent him the photos, his mother in our apartment, the nursery catalog, the dismantled office, the missing birth control. His response, "Mom's just trying to help." The rage rose in me like a tide. I called Rachel. "I need you to come over, now, and bring boxes." Boxes? She sounded worried. What's happening? I'm packing up Helen's little nursery project. Every last piece of it. Rachel arrived 30 minutes later with David Miller from work, both carrying moving supplies. They found me in the guest room, tearing down Helen's paint swatches. Jesus, David whispered, surveying the scene. This is some psychological warfare shit. Help me pack it all up, I said, shoving baby catalogs into a box. Every single thing she's brought in here. Every book, every pamphlet, every fucking baby-related item. We worked in focused silence, documenting everything. Rachel, ever the pragmatist, insisted on photographing and inventorying each item. You'll need evidence, she said quietly, for whatever comes next. By midnight, we had filled 6 boxes. I stood in my restored office, shoulders aching as David loaded the last box into his car. I'll store these at my place, he offered, in case you need them for anything. After they left, I sat at my desk, opening my laptop. The Singapore contract waited in my inbox, unsigned. My cursor hovered over it as I heard Mark's key in the door. He appeared in the doorway looking confused. What happened to all the what, Mark? The nursery plans? The redecorating? The invasion of our home? Angie, Mom's just... Don't. I turned to face him fully. Don't you dare defend her. Not after giving her a key without telling me. Not after letting her redecorate our home behind my back. She wants what's best for us. No. I clicked sign on the contract, watching his face as I did it. She wants what's best for her, and you're too weak to see the difference. The signed contract disappeared into cyberspace as Mark stood there, mouth open, watching the last threads of our marriage unravel in real time. 3 days after signing the Singapore contract, I came home to cardboard boxes. Not the ones I'd packed with Helen's nursery items. These were filled with my clothes, books, and personal items. A note sat on top of the nearest box, Mark's handwriting sharp and angry. I need space to think. Maybe you do too. My hand didn't shake as I called Rachel. I need your spare room. I'll be there in 20. She paused. Want me to bring a lawyer? Not yet. I hung up and walked through our apartment. No, Mark's apartment now. Touching walls, memorizing details. The framed photo from our wedding was missing from the hall. In its place, a fresh nail hole accused me of failure. The bedroom door opened behind me. I turned to find Mark, looking uncertain in yesterday's clothes. I thought you'd be at work, he said. Clearly. I gestured at the boxes. Interesting way to have a conversation. What conversation? You signed that contract without discussing it. You packed up everything Mom brought over. You're leaving anyway, right? Your mother broke into our home, Mark. She tried to reorganize our entire life without my consent, and you gave her the key. He ran a hand through his disheveled hair. She's trying to save our marriage. No, she's trying to create the marriage she wants, and you're letting her. Because she's right, his voice cracked. You're never here. When you are, you're working or planning the next trip. What about what I want? What do you want, Mark? Actually, you, not your mother's version of you. The silence stretched between us like a crime scene tape. Rachel's arrival broke the standoff. She took one look at the scene and started loading boxes into her SUV. David arrived minutes later, summoned by some silent signal system my friends had apparently developed. I'll get the rest, David said quietly, heading toward the bedroom. Mark watched them work, his face a mixture of anger and confusion. So that's it? You're just leaving? You packed my bags. I held up his note. Or did your mother do that too? Don't make this about her. Everything's about her. Has been since the day we got married. I pulled off my wedding ring, set it on the counter. Here's your space. Hope it's everything Helen wants it to be. Rachel touched my arm. Last box is loaded. I nodded, throat tight. I need one more minute. They left us alone. Mark stared at the ring on the counter like it might explode. I found the real estate listings, I said quietly. The ones your mother bookmarked. Family-friendly neighborhoods, all close to her house. Were you planning to tell me about those? His silence was answer enough. That's what I thought. I picked up my laptop bag. I'll have my lawyer contact you about the apartment. Angie, wait. No. I turned back, voice steady despite the earthquake in my chest. You don't get to Angie me after letting your mother systematically dismantle our marriage. You chose your side. Now you get to live with it. At Rachel's, I sat on her guest bed, surrounded by boxes of my dismantled life. My phone buzzed with a text from Helen. I hope you're satisfied with destroying my son's happiness. I blocked her number. Rachel appeared with wine and takeout. David's downstairs with more boxes. Want company or space? Company. I needed witnesses to keep myself from falling apart. Did I tell you the best part? He knew about the real estate listings. Helen's been planning our move to her neighborhood, and he knew. Jesus, Rachel sat beside me. What's your next move? I pulled out my laptop, opened my email. Singapore prep starts Monday. I'm going to throw myself into this project, build something that's actually mine, something neither of them can touch. And Mark? Mark can enjoy his space, all of it. I'll have my lawyer draw up separation papers tomorrow. Rachel squeezed my hand as David entered with the final boxes. He set them down carefully, then pulled out his phone. Eli wanted me to check on you, he said. The Singapore team is excited to have you lead the expansion. I nodded, unable to speak. My whole life packed in boxes, my marriage in shambles, and somehow my career was the only thing that still made sense. One more thing, David added. Helen showed up at the office looking for you. My head snapped up. What? Don't worry. Security has her photo now. She won't get in again. I laughed, the sound bordering on hysteria. She really thinks she can control everything, doesn't she? Not everything, Rachel said quietly. Not you. Not anymore. The email from Rachel landed like a bomb in my inbox. Listing goes live tomorrow. Charming family home in prestigious neighborhood. Helen's fingerprints all over it. I clicked the link. My apartment, our apartment, staged with Helen's touches everywhere. Family photos I'd never seen. A nursery where my office used to be. The master bedroom transformed into a shrine to domestic bliss. My phone buzzed. David, you need to see this. Helen's in the lobby again. I watched through my office window as security escorted her out, her designer handbag swinging like a weapon. She looked up, caught my eye, and smiled. That same triumphant smile from the day she showed me her key to my home. She's getting desperate, David said, appearing at my door. This is the third time this week. I turned from the window. Did you get what I asked for? He handed me a USB drive. Security footage from every day she accessed the building, plus timestamps of her keycard usage when you were traveling. Perfect. I slid it into my laptop, downloading everything to a secure folder. And the other thing? Your name's still on the deed. Mark can't sell without your signature. A plan started forming, dark and satisfying as bitter chocolate. I called Rachel. I need a favor, a big one. The kind that requires plausible deniability. The kind that requires your real estate license and complete discretion. Silence then. I'm listening. I want to be there for the open house, as a potential buyer. Angie, Rachel's hesitation crackled through the phone. That's crazy, maybe, but I want to see their faces when they realize what they're losing. More silence. What's your play here? Truth hurts, doesn't it? That's what Helen always said when she was criticizing my choices. Let's see how she handles some truth of her own. That evening, I sat in Rachel's living room, spreading printouts across her coffee table. Security logs, email timestamps, photos of Helen's unauthorized renovations, a detailed timeline of every manipulation, every boundary crossed. This is thorough, Rachel said, reviewing the evidence. Almost like you've been planning it. I learned from the best. Helen documents everything, every criticism, every helpful suggestion. Now it's my turn. My phone lit up with Mark's number. I declined the call. He's been trying to reach you, Rachel said carefully. Funny how he finds his voice after I find my spine. I sorted another stack of photos. The separation papers hit him hard, did they? Helen's been telling people you had a breakdown, that the pressure of your career made you unstable. The laugh that escaped me didn't sound entirely sane. Unstable? I'll show her unstable. Rachel touched my arm. Are you sure about this? Revenge might feel good now, but this isn't about revenge. I stood, pacing. It's about truth. Helen wants to play happy families? Fine. Let's show potential buyers exactly what kind of family they're buying into. My phone buzzed again. An email from Mark. Please talk to me. Mom's just trying to help. The house showing is tomorrow. We can still fix this. I showed Rachel the message. See? Still defending her. Still trying to fix me instead of the real problem. What if he realizes he was wrong? Too late. I gathered the evidence into a folder. He made his choice. Tomorrow, I make mine. Rachel studied me for a long moment. You're different. Harder. Good. I met her gaze. Soft things break. I'm done breaking. Later that night, I stood on Rachel's balcony, watching the city lights blur through unshed tears. My phone lit up with a text from David. Helen's at the office again. Security called the police this time. I smiled, imagining her face. Another piece of evidence for tomorrow's show. My wedding ring sat heavy in my pocket. I'd retrieved it from the counter before leaving our apartment. Tomorrow I'd return it. Not to Mark, but to Helen. Let her add it to her collection of family treasures. Another trophy in her museum of control. The plan was simple. Attend the open house. Ask the right questions. Share the right documents. Watch it all unravel. Helen taught me well. How to smile while wielding a knife. How to destroy with kindness. Tomorrow, I'd show her exactly how well I'd learned her lessons. I touched the folder of evidence, my ammunition in this war she started. Truth hurts, I whispered to the night sky. Let's see how much. The open house buzzed with potential buyers when I walked in, designer handbag holding my folder of evidence. Rachel gave me a subtle nod from across the room, playing her part perfectly as the listing agent. Helen's touches were everywhere. Family photos strategically placed, fresh flowers in crystal vases, the scent of apple pie wafting from the kitchen, a shrine to domestic perfection. The nursery is just through here, Helen's voice carried from down the hall. My son and his wife had such wonderful plans before well, sometimes career pressure can break even the strongest marriage. I followed the voice, heels clicking against hardwood floors that still felt like mine. A small group of couples followed Helen like ducklings, drinking in her performance. Such a shame, one woman whispered, choosing career over family. I cleared my throat. Interesting perspective, though I wonder about the legality of selling a property without both owners' consent. Helen froze, her perfect mask slipping for just a moment before recovering. I'm sorry, you are? Someone very interested in the property's history. I pulled out my phone, displaying the security footage, particularly these unauthorized entries. Quite concerning from a safety perspective, don't you think? The potential buyers shifted uncomfortably. Helen's smile turned brittle. Mark, she called out, we need you in here. He appeared in the doorway, stopping short when he saw me. Angie, what are you? Showing these lovely people our security footage. I turned my phone toward the group. See these timestamps? All during business hours when both owners were at work, using a key that was never authorized. This is hardly the time, Helen hissed. Oh, I think it's exactly the time. I opened my folder. Before anyone considers purchasing, they should know about the restraining order filed against you by Tech Innovations. 3 attempts to breach security in 1 week. That's concerning behavior for a mother-in-law. The whispers started. Couples began edging toward the door. You're making a scene, Mark said, reaching for my arm. I jerked away. Like the scene your mother made reorganizing our home without permission? Or the scene at my office when security had to remove her? She was trying to help. Help? I laughed, the sound sharp enough to make him flinch. By breaking into our home, by manipulating you against me, by trying to sell property she has no legal right to list. That's enough. Helen stepped forward, her facade cracking. You ungrateful. Careful, Helen. I held up my phone, still recording. The remaining buyers were openly leaving now. Rachel appeared in the doorway, professional mask firmly in place. Perhaps we should reschedule. There won't be a rescheduling, I said clearly. This property isn't for sale. Not without my signature, which you'll never get. You're destroying everything, Helen spat. Just like you destroyed my son's chance at a real family. No, Helen, you did that. Every manipulation, every boundary crossed, every attempt to control our lives, it's all documented. Would you like me to share it with your church group, your charity board? I hear they're quite traditional about respecting marriage vows. You wouldn't dare. I stepped closer. Try me. You taught me well, remember? About wielding power, about using people's reputations against them. I was paying attention. Angie, please. Mark's voice cracked. We can talk about this. I turned to him, really looked at him for the first time. He seemed smaller somehow, diminished. There's nothing left to say. You chose your side. Now you get to live with it. I pulled my wedding ring from my bag, placed it in Helen's hand. Here's your trophy. Add it to your collection of things you've stolen from me. The room fell silent. Even Helen seemed shocked into stillness. The separation papers are with my lawyer, I continued. Sign them, or the next open house will feature a very different kind of tour. Your choice. I walked out, legs steady despite the earthquake in my chest. Rachel followed me to my car. That was brutal. I gripped the steering wheel. Good. They needed to feel what I felt. Every violation, every betrayal. Angie, don't. My voice cracked. Just don't. I drove away, leaving my home, my marriage, and my revenge behind. It should have felt like victory. Instead, I felt hollow, scraped clean of everything but rage and grief. My phone buzzed. Eli Thompson. Singapore team needs you earlier than planned. Can you fly out next week? I typed back one word. Yes. Sometimes running away looks exactly like moving forward. Singapore's skyline glittered through the conference room windows as I delivered the final presentation of my first quarter abroad. Numbers don't lie. Our expansion had exceeded every projection. Remarkable work, Eli said as the board members filed out. Helen's been calling the office again. My hands stilled on my laptop. Still. She's claiming you're mentally unstable, that the separation is a breakdown, not a choice. I laughed, but the sound caught in my throat. 3 months of peace shattered by her persistence. Of course she is. My phone lit up. Rachel. Mark's here, at my office. Says he needs to talk to you. Then David. Helen just walked into the Singapore office. Security's holding her in the lobby. The room tilted slightly. I gripped the conference table. I can have her removed, Eli offered. No. I straightened my spine. I'll handle this. Helen stood in the lobby, designer suit pristine despite the 14-hour flight, that familiar sanctimonious smile in place. Darling, we need to talk. Security, I called. Please escort Mrs. Carter to conference room 3 and record everything. She followed, radiating disapproval. Such dramatics. Mark's worried sick. We all are. Worried? I closed the door behind us. Or inconvenienced? Your perfect family narrative isn't playing out according to script? You're having a breakdown. It's understandable, with the pressure. Stop. I pulled out my phone, displayed the screen. Live streaming to the Tech Innovations Board. Every word recorded. Still want to discuss my mental state? Her mask slipped. You wouldn't dare. Try me. You flew 14 hours to what? Save your son's marriage? Or salvage your reputation after I exposed your games? I made you, she hissed. Introduced you to Mark, welcomed you into our family. You tried to break me, remake me into your version of the perfect wife. But guess what? I gestured to the Singapore skyline. I'm thriving without your approval, without Mark's weakness, without any of it. Mark signed the separation papers this morning. The words hit like a physical blow, but I kept my face neutral. Good. He's devastated, staying with me while, of course he is. I laughed, still hiding behind Mommy. Some things never change. My phone buzzed. Rachel again. Mark just told me everything. Helen's been lying to him for months, showing him edited photos, fake texts. He knows the truth now. I looked up at Helen, seeing her clearly for the first time. Not powerful, not intimidating, just a desperate woman clinging to control. You know what your mistake was? I stepped closer. Teaching me your tricks. Every manipulation, every power play, I learned from the best. You ungrateful! The board received copies of everything this morning. The break-ins, the harassment, the attempts to sabotage my career. Your reputation on those charity boards you love so much, consider it gone. The color drained from her face. You can't. I already did. Check your phone. She grabbed her phone, fingers shaking as she scrolled through messages. Resignations from boards, canceled social engagements, her carefully curated world crumbling in real time. You destroyed my marriage, I continued. Tried to destroy my career. Now you get to watch your precious social standing collapse. Karma's interesting that way. Mark will never forgive you for this. I don't need his forgiveness, or your approval, or any of it. Security appeared at the door. Miss Carter, your next meeting is ready. I gathered my things, paused at the door. The difference between us, Helen? I don't need to control others to feel powerful. My success is mine. Remember that while you're rebuilding your social calendar. This isn't over, she called after me. Actually, it is. Security will escort you out. Don't come back. In my office, I finally let my hands shake. My phone lit up. Mark's number. After 3 months of silence, I declined the call, opened my email instead. The Singapore team needed responses. Contracts needed review. Life needed living. Rachel texted, "You okay?" I looked out at the Singapore skyline, at the empire I was building, at the life I'd chosen. Better than okay, I replied. I'm free. Sometimes the best revenge isn't destruction, it's success. Let Helen choke on that truth. The divorce papers arrived on my desk in Singapore, waiting like a time bomb among quarterly reports and expansion proposals. Mark's signature, still familiar after all these months, looked uncertain even in legal ink. My phone buzzed. Rachel. He's asking to see you. Says he's left Helen's house, getting therapy. I set the phone down, watched the sun paint Singapore's skyline in gold. Success tastes different now. Less like revenge and more like freedom. The knock at my office door wasn't unexpected. Mark stood there, thinner, older somehow, holding himself like a man at confession. You look good, he said. I am good. I gestured to a chair, maintained the distance of my desk between us. Rachel said you wanted to talk. Mom's in treatment. Her therapist says it's about control. Losing Dad, then trying to control me, us. He stopped, ran a hand through his hair. I should have seen it sooner. Yes, you should have. I left her house, got my own place, started therapy. He leaned forward. I know now what she did, what I let her do. Knowing isn't enough, Mark. I miss you, Angie. We could try again. Without her influence. Stop. I stood, walked to the window. Do you know what I've built here? What I've achieved while you were hiding behind your mother's skirts? He followed my gaze to the city below. I've read the reports. The expansion's incredible. It is. And I did it alone. No one questioning my choices, rearranging my life, making me smaller to fit their narrative. I was wrong. Yes, you were. But that's not why I won't come back. I turned to face him. I won't come back because I don't want to. I'm not the same woman who needed your approval or your mother's acceptance. What do you need? Nothing, that's the point. I picked up the signed divorce papers. I don't need anything from either of you anymore. His eyes fixed on the papers. You're really doing this? It's already done. Has been since the day you let her pack my things. I sat behind my desk again. How's the apartment hunting going? He blinked at the sudden change of topic. What? The apartment, our old place. Since I won't release my claim, you can't sell it. I hadn't thought about it. I have. I pulled out a document. I'm buying your half. Market value, clean break. My lawyer will contact yours. You want to keep it, after everything? I want to rent it to a women's shelter. They help professional women escaping domestic abuse. I met his eyes, including emotional abuse. He flinched. Angie, sign the papers, Mark. Let both of us move on. He stood slowly, defeat and something like respect in his posture. I really did love you. No, you loved the idea of me, the version your mother approved of. I handed him a pen. I prefer the real thing. After he left, I called Rachel. It's done. You okay? I looked at my reflection in the window, at the woman I'd become. I thought revenge would feel different, more satisfying. And it feels quiet, like putting down a heavy weight I didn't know I was carrying. Helen's been asking about you, at church, at her therapy groups, telling people how she lost her family to modern values. I laughed, still controlling the narrative. Still failing at it, nobody believes her anymore. My computer pinged. Another successful quarter, another milestone reached. You know what the best revenge turned out to be? What's that? Living well, building something that's completely mine. I opened my calendar, marked the shelter meeting for next week. Something that might actually help others. That's not revenge, that's growth. Maybe they're the same thing sometimes. After we hung up, I stood at my window watching Singapore light up for the evening. Somewhere in this city, another woman was choosing between her ambitions and someone else's expectations. Maybe she'd find her way to the shelter. Maybe she'd learn sooner than I did that success doesn't require permission. My phone buzzed one last time. Helen's number. I blocked it without reading the message. Some chapters need to stay closed. The future stretched before me, bright and uncertain and completely my own. No revenge could taste sweeter than that.